And we're back, and it is Friday again, 10 a.m., and you're listening to Prepper Talk Radio. And let me just check, make sure I got my two callers on the line. Are you there, Scott and John? Can I hear you guys? Oh, how about there? Can I hear you guys?
I am here.
All right. Awesome. Didn't want to be all alone in the studio by myself. Thanks, guys.
Well, I figured, let's test out the lone wolf scenario today. Give Shane a go at it, defending the castle all by himself.
Now, why would you do that when we know it's not a good idea? I mean, we constantly telling people it's not a good idea to be the lone wolf, yet you're making me be the lone wolf.
Well, I think this is a perfect example for showing people. It's an illustration more than anything. If we show them that it doesn't work, we've told them, and we've told them, and we've told them. Now let's show them so that
but how good is it for me?
They know exactly what to do.
But that's not good for me.
But we all love you.
Oh, thanks. Hey, John, how you doing?
Fans adore you.
Hey, I'm great, Shane. I'm sorry to hear you're down there by yourself. Jeez, I can't believe Scott just threw you under the bridge like that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Jeez.
Well, I figure, Scott, you're on an early Father's Day outing. Is that what this is?
Father's Day, Mother's Day, and our anniversary combined into one weekend getaway.
Weekend. Well,
you should
very
throw
cool.
Hanukkah in there, Scott.
Say that again, John?
He should throw Hanukkah in there, too. Do it all at once.
Oh, I got to wait till at least October before I start throwing Hanukkah into the mix. Personal rule, that's just how it is.
Well, of course, have John on from Survival Medical, survival-medical.com, our wonderful sponsor. And thanks for joining us again, John. So what are we talking about today? I know
we're talking about we just had the most incredible experience last weekend.
We did.
Jane and I got to go do the Readyman Challenge number 9, which in this scenario were a group of preppers assaulting a position. And the position we were assaulting was a group of marauders that had somehow taken one of our prepper group. And the details are kind of foggy. I don't think they really explained this.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow he got away, and somehow he identified where they were on a topographical map. And our mission was to go and see if a group of 6 could assault the position and take over the Marauders base and basically wipe them out. We were using infrared rifles, and we had the jackets and headbands on. And the best of all was we had the taser belts that would shock you if you got shot, which sucked.
And there is a video up on Prepper Talk Radio Facebook page, as you can see Scott getting shot and shocked there. That's a little kind of entertaining.
That's the best video ever. It reminds me of from PrepperCon. There was the security guard girl that was getting tased.
Yep.
And that video was all over social media. And now my new favorite is Scott getting shocked up there.
The thing about that one that's great is with her, you can see that she knows when it's coming because you can see she's getting tased, right? Me, I'm just like, it's already connected. It's just a matter of the guy pulling a trigger from 20 feet away or 10 feet away.
Nothing you can do about it.
So it's like, I can't dodge it. I've got to just stand there and take it like a champ. And it wasn't quite as bad as some of the tasers I've been shocked with, but the old school tasers got nothing on that thing. That belt, and it can dial up to a 15. It was at a 10.
I say it got worse for you, didn't it, Scott?
Oh, it got worse. Well, shortly thereafter, before we even started the mission, we're on our little drive up the mountain. We're in all these little Razor scooters things, not scooters, Razor side-by-side. And it was either the infrared cameras or the sun hitting at the perfect angle, but it kept setting off my rig, and I kept getting shocked.
While
he's
driving,
yelling at my team, like, all right,
he's driving.
Put your guns away. What the crap is going on? My whole team's just like looking back at me.
And
I don't know
he's
what's going on.
literally
I'm like,
going into convulsions here, but getting shocked. So let's kind of describe what this...
While driving.
Yes.
So, like,
up a narrow trail.
A narrow trail through the mountains, taking, sharp corners and convulsing as I'm getting shocked, not expecting it, not prepared for it, not engaged in any combat. But it kind of gives you the idea of, okay, this is what it's like in real combat. You don't know when you're going to get ambushed. But I wasn't thinking that then. That's a hindsight, aftermath thought.
Yeah, and the idea is that it shocks you so that you don't want to get shot. I mean, when you're playing with infrared guns or whatever, it doesn't hurt, right? I mean, if you're shooting paintballs, yeah, that hurts. You don't want to get hit. But shooting light, it's not going to hurt. So this is the reason for the shock here. So you really want to avoid getting shot and make it as much a real life as possible. And I think this kind of gear that we were fortunate enough to have the the opportunity to use is probably the best stuff on the market for this type of simulation. I think it's pretty awesome.
Well, what's interesting is this is basically the same product that my brother-in-law, who went through Ranger School, and he's actually a lieutenant colonel now in the Army. He talked about using this type of equipment 5-10 years ago. And I was like, how does that even work? And now I'm like, oh, I get it. I get how it works. I don't like it. It's awesome, but I don't like it. I mean, getting shot the 3 times in a row on the trail was probably the worst of it all.
Mm-hmm.
The first shot, because I was kind of mentally ready for it, those 3 I was like, oh yeah. Oh, I was uppity after that one. I was pretty ticked.
Yeah, so last week we talked a little bit about tactical prepping, and I think it doesn't get any more tactical than actually going out with veterans and active duty military as well and practicing this scenario. And the reason we wanted to talk to you about this particular scenario and the opportunity we got to go out and do this is I think it helps us all prepare a little bit better, maybe a little differently, so change up our tactics of how we want to prep and what we want to take with us, what we don't. What's your take on that, Scott?
And hopefully it's a paradigm shift. I mean, I hear a lot of conversations where, there's a small group of preppers, and they're like, well, if someone ever is a danger to us, we'll just go take them out.
Mm-hmm.
And this experience is interesting because we learned from former Green Berets the right tactics and the wrong tactics.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, they let us go on it our own, and then they correct us and let us fix it, right? And so Jeff Kirkham with Readyman was one of the primary guys. So we had our team of 6. Shane and I were on the same team. And then we had a guy by the name of Mohammed, or you call him
Wally.
Was it Wally? Yeah, Wally. And he's actually a former Special Forces, Afghani Special Forces, working with the U.S. to get rid of Al-Qaeda and all those other bad guys. But we weren't supposed to know that. We didn't know that until after the event was over. And so we had him, and then we had 3 Air Force. One was now Air National Guard linguist. One was actually the other 2 were ammo depot guys. So they managed who could check out the big bullets for the pilots and whatnot and stuff.
So they weren't really a tactical advantage to us to have these active military because they were
all
special
like
forces.
Preppers.
And when I first heard the scenario, because we didn't find out what the scenario was until we showed up, and it's basically going to be preppers against marauders. So these marauders, we saw them standing out there. They're all decked out in their camo, and these are all veterans or active duty military. And of course, I was a little apprehensive.
Actually, only 3 of them were
okay.
veterans or active duty. The other 3 weren't. But these guys are a top-rated paintball team.
Okay.
So they've been working
tactics
together in this type of environment for about a decade.
Mm-hmm. So when I first heard our scenario, I was definitely like, okay, this is not a good idea. And why is it not a good idea to attack another group that's trained? I mean, what's your thoughts? Was that your initial thought, Scott? I mean, was that your initial thought? Like,
I totally agree with you. I think it's an absolute insane idea to just go attack a group. You don't know who they are, what they are, whether we know that they're tactically advantaged or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have enough intel to pull off a 24-hour run and gun. Let's go get them. Right?
And with the scenario being, okay, these guys are a danger to you and your family, and although they have not necessarily been a threat so far, other than the one individual that was attacked. I think the very first thing I learned was that, okay, don't do this. This is not a good idea.
Well, let's run through the scenario so the listeners know kind of what we did. So first, once we got to the position where they told us exactly what was going on, we then decided to hike this mountain to get to a higher position. We had a topographical map. We had an idea of where they were in the foliage, about a quarter mile to a half mile away.
And
but we wanted to get to higher ground so we could actually have
a tactical advantage. And that's one thing that I think is pretty common sense is okay, if you have the high ground, you have the advantage.
But we also wanted to have, coverage. We wanted to have foliage in the way. We didn't want them to easily see us or spot us. Plus, we wanted to get them tired before they got up to where we were, so we didn't have to worry about them as much. But one of the rules of engagement was no engagement during the dark. because they're filming the whole thing. So before nightfall, we found a place to have camp. We set out a security patrol, and you were part of that security patrol, Shane, so I'll let you talk about kind of that experience. You guys went out to investigate.
We went to do some recon. Yeah, so we first set up our camp location, which we picked high ground. And we knew the general area where this camp was supposed to be. So 3 of us went out and did recon. We wanted to gather as much information as possible. And that's, I think, one of the main things I really learned about this whole exercise is that having the right information is invaluable. And that's kind of one of the reasons we do this show for you guys and for us, too. It's a great learning experience. So we went out, 3 of us, along a particular trail, kind of knew where this camp was, and tried to get as close as we could, as quietly as possible, so they wouldn't see us. We didn't want to, get shot before the whole activity even began. And so we did a quick recon, tried to do a count of individuals, their surroundings, their circumstances, or where they're located, so that we could plan for our assault the next day.
So you guys met with some interference. You heard a lot of people identifying your location, but they are actually identifying the videographer's location, not yours.
Yeah, so you exactly.
Guys scramble out of there.
Camera guys kind of giving us away, but
12 days. So you guys came back to camp. We set up for the night. We set up our security details. Who's going to patrol at what times? We had all that set and ready to go, and then we, for the most part, had dinner and turned in. Didn't do any campfires. We wanted to stay as invisible as possible leading up for the next day. Sadly, unfortunately for us, these guys broke the rules, took off their IR jackets, brought all their rifles, put on night vision goggles, and assaulted our position during the middle of the night, which was...
It was a learning experience for me.
Big eye-opener.
It was.
Well, tell us your experience. Tell us how it happened for you.
Well, we have about a minute left before the break here, before you have to let you go, Scott. But
I can stay on for a little longer.
Okay, fantastic. So essentially, we had put our bed rolls down, whatever you want to call them, and just laid down and tried to get some sleep because we were each taking a turn to do a night to watch during the night, watch and listen. And so as I was laying there, wasn't quite asleep. I had heard off in the distance, "Contact!" Someone yelled, "Contact!" And like, okay, and that's one point of confusion. Okay, we didn't really talk about communication. We didn't really talk about what ways should we indicate if everybody needs to get up and defend the position. So there was quite a bit of learning done there. But so essentially, I got up, tried to do what I was asked to do, put my infrared vest back on, turn everything back on, so it takes a few minutes to kind of get set back up. Had my rifle out, went out from beyond our little kind of hidden position, and immediately had a flashlight in my face and was shot.
And not just a flashlight, a strobe light.
Well, yeah, he was using his momentary function on his tactical light, so it wasn't on full time. It was you press the button, it goes on, you let go, it comes off. So you're not always giving away your position. It's a quick burst of light so that you can identify your target, take the shot, which was very smart. I thought, okay, this guy, unfortunately, he knows what he's doing. He lights me up, light goes off, he takes me out.
So from that point, Shane's dead.
Yeah,
and we're running into a break. So
for this particular attack, I was dead.
Yep. So as a reminder, make sure you've got your first aid kit, so in case you survive, you've got something to take care of you.
There we go.
Brings me to Survival Medical. Survival Medical is the first aid kit Shane and I carry with us.
Mm-hmm.
For this event, we actually both, I believe, were carrying the backcountry ultralight.
Yes.
And then in our cars, we had the Voyagers and the backcountry kit, the XL. So check it out. Backcountry is my favorite. Check them all out. Survival-medical.com. And we're going to be running to a break here in a second. But
music's on right now, if you can't hear it.
Oh, I can't hear it, so I'll let you finish it up.
Perfectly done. Yeah, thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the other side of the break. Talk a little bit more about our experience here and a few other fun things. Thanks. All right, now, before the break, we have been talking about a little experience that Scott and I had this last weekend with the Readyman team called the Readyman Challenge. And Scott and John, I still have you there?
Yep.
All right, awesome.
Yep, I'm here.
And we've got some announcements and such to make, but we'll take advantage of Scott while he's on the phone as long as we possibly can before he gets on the Heber Creeper, right?
Yes, sir. I got about 5-10 minutes. So let's wrap up the story,
Okay.
and then I'll let you guys talk about
Some more of the details.
security and kind of the takeaways. Because one of the reasons I want to have John on today is because he actually has been completely off grid and in charge of his own security, in charge of his own fire services, in charge of his own police, and everything else you need to worry about. He's had to do that. So it's a different take on what a lot of the people, especially the urban preppers, are used to, and the mindset changes. You need to make sure you change that mindset when you're going off grid and when you're going into survival mode. There's a lot more to really consider. So story-wise, so Shane's shot at this point, and my 2 security detail are shot. So there's 3 of us left.
Yeah, they weren't much good, honestly.
And well, they thought it was a camera crew coming up because they saw him. They started talking to him. Then all of a sudden, there's a smoke grenade, and they're getting shot.
Yeah, these guys had smoke grenades, and we did not.
Yeah, we were completely overrun with far superior weaponry, tactics, and gear. I mean, it was
experience.
It was insane. And experience. So they get into camp. The first 2 guys enter camp, and I'm in a cover spot, so they can't shoot me. Nor do they know where I am because of the cover.
Completely dark. When the moon's out, but.
And I lean out and I shoot him, and I unload a 30-round magazine, and I'm like, they're not dying. What the heck? What's going on? And they jump out and they run out of camp. They're like, oh crap, these guys are set. We can't see him. So they send him back in with their strobe light going, and with the infrared guy with his goggles on, or the night vision goggles guy. So he comes in, and he's calling out shots, and I'm like, I swear I got these guys again. I'd reloaded. Each magazine has 30 rounds. It's a CO2 cartridge, so you actually feel the kick of the gun.
So
I'm going
action.
again, and I'm like, these guys are not dying. What is going on? And they finally hit me, and I die, and my lights and everything's shaking, and I'm getting shocked, and I'm like, well, I'm dead. But I then see John at the other side, another John, one of our team members up there. He's engaging him from the other side. So I'm like, okay, there's 3 guys dead at this point, but none of them died. Well, they go out, and another 4 guys come in, and they're sweeping, trying to find everybody that's left. They know that there's at least 1 guy left, so they're following the little trail in our camp to the back of the camp. And Wally takes cover, and you can't see him, and they completely sweep across him and above him, but they never see him, and they pass him. And then he pops out and engages them from behind, and he's like, I took out all 4, and none of them died. He's like, there's something wrong. And then they turn around and shoot him. So we had technically eliminated the threat.
Because we had chosen a good location.
Yeah, but because we didn't have a fair fight, they weren't wearing their IR gear, we lost. So it kind of leads to the scenario, you're never in a fair fight.
Yeah,
so in warfare, there's no such thing as a fair fight. You need to take every advantage that you can. So that was the takeaway from the night. But then the next morning, when light hits and we're allowed to engage with the camera crews, it's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't want to navigate down the same trail that we knew that they'd be watching that trail. So we had to blaze our own trail for probably, a half a mile?
Yeah, I think it seemed further than that, but when you're bushwhacking, it seems like a long distance. But yeah, so I would say about a half mile.
Yeah, I don't think any more than half a mile, but it was a substantial length bushwhacking.
Mm-hmm.
Going through, and we had to get quiet the last few hundred yards so they couldn't hear us coming. But we had to navigate on this map where we're going, and it was kind of funny because we got to a certain point that I was wanting to be at so we can cross over a ridge line, and everyone's telling me I'm in the wrong spot. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you guys we're here. And everyone's like, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, we are. No, you're not. Yes, we are. And it wasn't until Wally's like, yeah, I think we're right here, that people are like, well, okay, there's 2 people thinking we're there, so let's just let them go. And I think the reason everyone finally relented and let me say this is where we are was because I was the commander in charge, which was weird to get put in charge, but
yes,
okay.
I was put in charge of our group.
Yeah. And so everyone kind of finally was like, okay, go for it. So then we're like almost crouch hiking over the ridge right onto their camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we hear them talking, we spread out, we send 2 guys into probe. I'm one of them, and Corey's the other guy.
Yeah, I don't think you could have done a better job at getting us to the exact right location where we wanted to, enter their camp. I mean, it was
thought we'd
ideal.
be a little bit like I thought we'd be within about 10, 20 feet of where I wanted to be. I was like surprised we were almost perfectly there.
Yeah, it was very. That's where as preppers and knowing our navigation skills, that's I think where we really had an edge, at least.
Yeah.
On navigating exactly to where their camp was.
Oh yeah, and it was pretty much you and I and Wally that were the only ones that were really focusing on the navigation. Everyone else was going off their guts. And we're like, no, guys, this is where we are. This is here. That's there. This is on the map. This is what it means.
Know your map.
And
know how to use a compass and practice.
Oh yeah, and it was a crude map at that. We didn't know any of the dimensions, any of the distances, so it was all estimating based on landmarks.
On terrain. Mm-hmm.
So we get in there. We're going to probe, and Corey and I were supposed to probe and not engage so that we can come back and give them intel.
So it's basically send out two people instead of the entire group of 6 to get a little closer, get a little bit better intel, and then come back and then formulate another plan to how to assault the camp.
Exactly. Well, we get about 20, not even 30 feet away from our group, and Corey's engaging.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, what are you doing?
Too early.
And then way too early. And all of a sudden, our whole camp comes alive, and we can't really see any of them. We can see like maybe 2 out of the 6 or 7 of them. And so we're hiding. I'm belly crawling through the worst bushes I've seen, and I'm belly crawling. I look over and I see Wally crouching in behind some trees and stuff, and I take out 2 guys. Corey's dead. Wally's alive. I'm alive. You're alive.
Mm-hmm.
Jess is alive. And then John gets shot and killed. And then let's see, we took out these 2 guys. You guys took out another couple of guys. And so they had like 1 or 2 guys left.
So as I guess to explain a little bit in deeper detail, we came in on the high side. We came in above their camp. The sun was to our back, so the sun was in their face. And so we definitely had the advantage if we did it right, if we were quiet enough, if we did it right, which, again, was all part of this learning experience of how to assault and another camp of those who are already basically waiting for you and armed and ready.
Yeah. And so they knew we were coming. I mean, the intel they had is they knew we were coming. But at that point, they knew pretty much where we were, what we were doing. We engaged too early. Had we waited a little longer, we'd have been able to tell where everyone was, and then we could have assaulted a small position at a time and taken them out. Well, the cameras made us stop, and they checked all the gear, and then they restarted so they can get better angles for filming. And then we got completely wiped out, except for you and Jess, but they still had like 5 guys left, and then they called it. Mm-hmm. The camera crew called it. And
yeah, basically because we had 4 guys that were down, and at that point, what's the call? Okay, do you continue assaulting the camp when there's only 2 of you, and you're against 5? No, that's not a smart idea. So at that point, the call was made. Okay, we're going to retreat. We're going to pull back and call the game essentially.
Yeah, and the big thing was here are the big things that we learned. One is after the fact, we sat down, we talked through everything, and Jeff's big thing was understanding the recon. The recon is what should have saved us. Mm-hmm. More importantly, though, is understanding the numbers. And the number rule is if you're not outnumbering them 3-1, you don't engage because you're at a tactical disadvantage. You don't know what they're doing, where they are, how they're set up.
Yep.
You just don't do it.
Even though we
and
had
even then, you want to get more information.
Mm-hmm.
So it was absolutely eye-opening, and it was one of the most fun experiences I've had in a long time, but also one of the best educational moments I've enjoyed. Mm-hmm. Because these are things that, as a standard prepper, we don't really engage in that kind of learning. We don't really people talk about it, but nobody really does it.
Right, we're not in front of the computer. You're actually out in the field.
And
it's not an easy thing. I mean, hiking through the bush with we have our full packs on. We have the packs that we packed in with all our gear to sleep in, and and all our food prep and all that kind of stuff.
Basically, our bug out bag.
Basically, our bug out bag is kind of the idea, the premise. We were supposed to come as preppers with our what we call our bug out bag, and Scott and I call it our get home bag, and I call it more of my tool bag. But come with that, and then that's what you had to carry around. So, and we can talk more about that in detail about the other things that I learned. Okay, what am I going to take? What am I not going to take next time? What are those types of things, and then use that and basically have that pack through the bush, do the bushwhacking, and then assault this camp. Before we did the actual assault, we did drop our packs, and I guess that's something, a technique that the special forces do use. They'll carry the big pack in.
Yeah,
they'll drop it.
Drop their heavy pack and just take in their tactical gear. But they drop it at a rally point right outside of the assault area so that it's in a safe zone and that it's hidden. And we kind of did that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the biggest takeaway, again, it's the educational point. As preppers, we talk about it a lot, but we don't educate ourselves enough about engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's
one of the big things
I want to have John on for, is because he understands the defensive side of it pretty well from living off grid, and it's not just people. John, you had to deal with bears and all kinds of other marauders, I guess you could call them.
Yeah.
When you were living off grid, tell us what that was. What was it you had to prepare for, or had to keep in mind as you were going off grid?
I had much bigger problems with the bears pawing away at the pipe that went from the spring to the house. That was my marauder. The bears hear the water moving through the pipe, and so they like to play with it, and it tears the pipe up.
Nice.
That was my marauders I had to deal with. But
very stealthy too.
What's that?
Very stealthy marauders too.
That's right. I think you bring up some really interesting points, and I think this is an awesome opportunity that you guys had a chance to go do something like that. In fact, it kind of reminds me of a more organized version of going camping with my brothers. Both of my brothers are pretty elite guys in the military, and that was what it was like growing up. That's how they experience things when they'd go to their different schools, Ranger School or Officer Candidate School. Exactly like you described. You tuck in, you think everything's fine. Next thing you know, you're getting attacked in the middle of the night. That actually completely reminded me of those experiences as a teenager camping with my brothers. So thanks for taking me down memory lane. And my first question, I guess, to you guys is Readyman. I had no idea this was. Can anyone sign up to go do these classes with a group of friends?
Pretty much. So they set it up so that if you're they have a couple different memberships. There's the standard membership, and then there's what's the higher level membership, Shane? Do you remember?
Yeah, they've got two different levels. Readyman, access to the video content and training and such, and then the next level up, I think, is for their, and I forget what it's called.
But
basically evaluates your gear and your bug out philosophy and that kind of stuff.
It's like $35 a month, which is nothing when you're looking at the level of education you're getting out of it. But the next time they do a challenge, they do like 4 a year. So the next time they do a challenge, they usually talk to Shane and I. So I'll make sure we get a bug in their ear to put you in there too, because that would be such a neat opportunity. They're always different.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges they did, they went scuba diving, and then the challenge was, okay, your boat disappears or you get lost. Now what do you do to survive? And so they had a few guys that were scuba certified that went, and then they had a film crew that was scuba certified that went. But all the challenges are different. It could be that you're on a bug out challenge where you're supposed to see how well your bag's going to last you for 3-4 days in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And I believe they're trying to ramp this up for more of the public too.
There's a number of things. You never know what it could be.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. I think it's awesome those guys are creating those kind of opportunities for folks to go and do exactly that. I guess to your question, Scott, my scenario was different. I guess I lived in the Southern Cascades, and really, of course, while being a prepper, all of that was on my mind. But it was me and my family and I there, and so I guess my version of that was, for instance, probably 2 or 3 times a week, I would take my very young sons at that time. We'd go on essentially a hike, teaching them to track. And really what we were doing was a few things. We're getting them into nature, getting us out together in the woods. We were learning how to identify movement of natural animals and getting them used to looking for those tracks. And so what we'd do is we'd find a cool track and we'd say, hey, let's follow this one. We'd see how far we could follow it. Because our land was surrounded by Forest Service land, so we could just hike for, days. And I guess, number one, it got us used to looking at the environment around us so that we noticed if anything was different. Number two, it got us familiarizing ourselves with every last detail of the terrain around us. And if the scenario was reversed and it was your home that you were defending, as you guys pointed out, some of the best knowledge you could have and the greatest advantage you could have is knowing that terrain, knowing what it looks like, knowing all the different pieces of it so that if something's amiss, you notice it right away. And that was really kind of the closest thing we continually practiced as a family there was that activity. And it was under the guise of telling my young kids, hey, we're going to learn how to track. And, of course, every young boy thinks that's awesome. But there was a lot of other things being taught there, familiarizing themselves with the terrain and training your mind to look for subtle differences that 99.9% of people, when they're walking through the woods, don't look for. It's amazing where we train our eyesight to be as we move through the woods, or as we're moving in general, I guess. And so that was really the practice there of getting them to look deeper.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll dig into that a little bit more after this break. Scott, I guess we'll let you go. Or unless you've already gone there, Scott? Yep, Scott has already gone. So thanks for listening to us here on Prepper Talk Radio, listening to Shane and John of Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. See you guys after this break. And we are back. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio, the Prepper Talk Radio Hour. First aid evolved by survival-medical, survival-medical.com, our wonderful sponsor, with John on the air with us. You still there, John?
I'm here, man. This has been a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun. You guys' story was fantastic and really gets your mind going about the things we need to do to stay ready.
Well, I'm glad at least you're enjoying it.
Fantastic experience, guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we'll get into that a little bit more here, but let me get through a few announcements I need to take care of here. One thing we are supposed to announce here on the air is that K-Talk Media is sponsoring a hole at the Golden Gloves golf tournament this Friday morning. So that's this morning from 7 to 10 a.m., so it's already underway. And they will also be broadcasting from the Republican Party special election with Paul Jansen and special political guests and appearances by Sherilyn Eager, Larry Freese, Kate Allen, and many more. Come by the booth and say hello. So that is already well underway, so we always appreciate your support. I also wanted to let you guys know about a kind of a prepper conference that's coming up. It's called the Prepper World Summit. It's the 4th annual, and it is online, and it's prepperworldsummit.com. I'll go to the Facebook page. It starts on June 24th, and a lot of the local guys like Jeff Kirkham we had on last week have been talking about Readyman. Some of those guys are going to be speaking at this summit, and a lot of great information over, I think, 3 or 4 days of talks and discussions and so forth. So check it out on Facebook. And then also this weekend down in Provo, and I don't have all the details for this one, from I think just one single day, and I want to say at the Provo Convention Center, but it may not be down there. It is a Utah Preparedness Expo, so jump online and see if you can find anything about. I was going to have Scott give us some more details on that, but I forgot while we were talking about all this fun stuff. But there is an expo down in Provo, a good guy, and he puts on a nice little expo, so hopefully you can get down there and check it out. Now, where were we, John? We were talking about our little experiences last week. One thing I think in particular that I wanted to bring up, tried to, of course, let Scott talk as much as possible before he's gone, and get his perspective on our weekend. And I think just along with Scott's perspective, it was one of the most informative weekends I've been able to spend. Now, I know that this being kind of a tactical exercise, kind of a military exercise, doesn't really apply to most preppers out there. I mean, I think it truly doesn't. I have a personal interest in that. I always kind of have had that interest, and I think there's a lot to be learned other than just the tactics of being able to assault a position like a Special Forces company, Special Forces group would assault. That's not something that I advocate. When I mentioned before, is that when I first heard this mission, my first thing that went through my head, this is not good. This is not good for us. First of all, not having that knowledge and that experience of being able to attack a group of bad people, let's just call it that. And I think that's kind of the premise, is that, okay, we're preppers, we're trying to protect what's ours. The S has hit the fan, and we're just trying to survive. And someone made the call, apparently, that it would be best to take out this marauder group before they take out us, do a preemptive strike, per se. So not that I'm advocating that or pretending it's any kind of a good deal. I would not take this strategy in real life, honestly. John, what's your take?
Well, there's a lot of different things that could add into that scenario. I mean, for instance, I thought part of the scenario was they had a member of your group there, right?
They had assaulted, I guess, a member of the group or attacked him or something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if they're going around and have already hurt your friends and neighbors, and you knew they were you were next on the list, I think it's better to make an organized effort before the forces, otherwise you give them the advantage.
Yeah.
So I think that has to be thought out. If the point is to not let them get the advantage and come at your position at a time and place that you don't know about, as opposed to going to a place where you do know about them. You know where they're at. You know how many there are. You know what their training is. You know you've learned all this information about them. Then I think that there's a time and place and possibility for that scenario to play out. Sure.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you a little bit, but I think and having limited time to go through this exercise was a bit of a hindrance to us because I think kind of like what you're saying is we need to know a lot of things, need to know how many people, need to know their capabilities, need to know where they're at, and so forth. So I think that takes a lot of time to be able to gather that type of information more than we had in this particular exercise. So it's hard to make that call, right off the bat, hey, we're going to go attack these guys because we feel they're threatening us because this is our bug out location, this is where we're at, we have all our supplies, our family here, we feel threatened, so let's attack. I don't know if that's always the right call. We would definitely need more information, more intel on that particular group. So that was my first impression on that exercise. I think my next impression that really hit me hard is that, and obviously this is apparently something that the military does, in all of their aspects, and I think we should implement this into our prepping, is they do a lot of rehearsing. They do a lot of rehearsal. So, and to give you an example, when we were planning on going into this camp, we lined up. Okay, there's a leader, there's a guy in the tail end, and we each have our roles. We have to practice our communication with hand signs and how we're going to actually approach the camp, and how and so forth. So we would actually rehearse that. We'd get in a line. We would pick a location. We'd travel from point A to point B, and how we would attack this group, and the things we would yell, and the signs we would show. And so it was about a rehearsal. So I think that's something that we can all really try to incorporate into our prepping, is more, not just call it practice, but actually a rehearsal with everybody in location, with all the gear, and rehearse that. What's your thoughts, John?
I tell you exactly what it reminds me of. When I first started fighting, shadow boxing was a very awkward drill. Mm-hmm. And I think it relates to what you're saying in the sense of, as preppers, we don't rehearse a whole lot. And frankly, because at first it's just kind of awkward, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what am I doing here, playing G.I. Joe in the woods? But again, back to the analogy there of the shadow boxing is, any elite level boxer, anything of the sort, will tell you that's one of the most practical, realistic beneficial drills that you can ever do. Because what you're doing there is practicing the power of visualization. And so once you get in the habit of seeing, this punch come at you and learning how to slip it and counter, it becomes more realistic. So when you find yourself sparring or in a real fight, it's a much more natural reaction, even though it started off very awkward because it's something that you hadn't done, and you're standing in a gym, throwing punches at nothing. Very similar to the scenario of practicing these type of things. Is I don't think we do it a lot because it's just awkward to do some things for the first time. That doesn't take away from the power that's behind them, actual doing it. And you're absolutely right. I think I know I fall short in that kind of stuff with my family. We don't practice. We'll take it down a notch. Like we don't practice just a drill of, hey guys, in
fire escape
2 minutes. You need to grab your bug out bags and meet us at our meeting location because, a fire happened or because, whatever the scenario you make up. I mean, now that you're bringing this up, I don't think I've done that with my family in probably a year and a half.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable.
Yeah, not just sitting down and at family evening and saying, okay, this is what our plans are going to be. This is what we're going to do. And just as a reminder, but actually, okay, we're going to practice a fire drill. What do we do? We're going to be in our beds. I'm going to blow a whistle, and then that's the indication for a fire. We're going to get down on your knees. You're going to crawl out and actually practice the fire drill rather than just talk about it. Like you're saying, the shadow boxing. And although it may seem silly, okay, I don't need to practice this because I know what I'm doing, right? Especially crawling on the floor. I mean, that can seem a little childish. But there is definitely something about getting your body in through those motions and creating that familiarity with that exercise so that when it comes down to it, you're less likely to freeze up. You're more likely to perform according to your plans.
A perfect example, I think, that I'm guessing you probably experienced out there. If you didn't, I know that I would have in your shoes because it's been so long since I've practiced something like this. But when you were crawling through the woods, trying to be quiet at night to understand more about their position on that little scouting mission that you went on part of this, tell me your nerves weren't just going through the roof.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's and that's another thing about it is yes, you are definitely at high alert position, and one thing that Jeff would say, take your time, go slow, there's no rush in this exercise, or in the real world, because if you're not taking your time and taking every step carefully, you might give your position away, you might step on a mine or whatever, but yeah, absolutely, you're at not just at high alert, you're beyond that, especially if you're not practiced, right? Your mind's not necessarily clear, you're not seeing everything you need to see.
That's the big advantage that you have in practicing that kind of thing, Shane, is, if I was to go out and do that right now, and I'm sure that just like you were, your heart was racing, and all you were doing is crawling through the woods at night, with a toy gun, for Pete's sake. Why was your heart racing? Well, your heart was racing because you were so out of your comfort zone, so out of your norm. If you did that once a month, come month 6, it's no big deal. And then come the real situation, God forbid that ever has to happen, think how much farther ahead you are in a psychological state. So I think that's the biggest advantage in that type of exercise that you guys went on is the psychological state. Just like the shadow boxing in the gym, it was best for your great for a psychological state because you visualize the other person in front of you, and so that when you actually found yourself in a ring, there was nothing surprising about it. You could stay very relaxed. Of course, he's hitting me. I'm in a ring. Just very similar. Of course, I'm crawling through the woods, checking these people out. I do this all the time. It's no big deal. Your body, your mind, your system is used to it, so it's not a surprise or a shock.
So, how else do you think we should apply that to prepping, to more everyday basic type prepping activities, not necessarily practicing a fire drill or
I think it goes as simple as when's the last time you got out the wheat grinder and you pulled some red wheat berries out and you opened up the can and you ground it up and you made bread. I think it can be scaled back to something that simple, Shane. Of there's a lot of this stuff that I'm guilty of it just like everyone else is. I find all this stuff sitting somewhere in my basement or sitting somewhere in my shop, and I don't take into account the fact that it's a little bit different to cook from, with dried beans and hard red wheat than it is the milled white flour and canned beans that I use on a daily basis. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah, absolutely great point. Pull out the Dutch oven, pull out the briquettes, and go out and make some food on your back patio.
Exactly. I mean, I think with something that simple, again, what we're talking about is practicing so that the abnormal can become normal in a stressful situation. And that's the biggest thing when you hear really intelligent folks like Cash Valley and Jeff Kirkham, talk about preparedness. I think the biggest thing that you hear there is, the psychological state.
Yeah, and that's one thing we really try to, I think, impress upon everybody's minds is make this part of your everyday life. It's not something odd. It's not something strange. Prepping is real life. It's self-reliance, self-sufficiency. John, thanks for being on again. And we, of course, love Survival Medical. Please check out survival-medical.com. And we will got a special guest next week, and we will talk to you. Hopefully you listen to us next week. Thanks, John. We'll catch you later.
See you, Shane. Thanks a lot.
Talent hits a